Okay, sir.
Yeah, good evening, my dear friends. So today we are going to talk about a decade of evidence and experience of cardiorenal safety across the diabetes era, the simplicity with linagliptin. I am Dr. Sepuri Krishnamohan. I am an endocrinologist. I have my own setup, Sepuri Diabetes and Endocrine Center in Kurnool. So, so this is taken from this the International Diabetes Federation 2019 Diabetes Atlas. The diabetes is a global emergency, and the number of people that is in between 20 to 79 years with diabetes globally, as per International Diabetes Federation 2019, you can see the projections. Like 2019, and the entire world was 463 million population of diabetes, and when projected to 2030, it has become 578 million, and by 2045, it would be somewhere around more than 700 million. That is with an increase of 51%, which is abnormal, and it is exponential breakout of diabetes actually. So when you compare this with the other parts of the world, you take North America and the Caribbean islands, the same is 2019 becomes like it is 48 million, and 2030 it would be like 56 million, and 2045 it would be 63 million, that is 33% increase. And when you take this, the Central and the South America, the 2019 it is 32, and 30, the 2030 it is 40 million, and 2045 it is 49 million, that is with an increase of 55%. And when it comes to Africa, the highest increase you find is the 143% increase by 2045. As of now, it is like 19 million, and it becomes 29 million by 2030, and by 2045 it becomes 47 million. And the Middle East and the North Africa, that is the 2019 shows 55 million, and 2030 it would be 76 million, and 2045 it would be 108 million, that is the increase is like by 96%. And when you take this the West Pacific, the Australian, the New Zealand and that and all. So it was 163 million, that becomes 197 by 2030, and 212 million the 2045, and it is an increase by 31% actually. So when you take this Europe, it is 59 million, and by 2030 it is 66 million, and 2045 the projection would be 68 million, that is 15% increase. So much sophisticated techniques are there in the Europe, the methods they are following. For example, if I have to quote, you have to quote these Scandinavian countries, the small countries, the Norwegian diabetes registry, or the Finland diabetes registry, or the Sweden diabetes registry. They are maintaining each and every registry, not only the diabetes, the hypertension, the obesity, and the cardiovascular disease, and the strokes and all cancers. They maintain registry for each and every one disease, and they are taking the maximum care not to increase the incidence. So, and coming to the last one, that is our own the Southeast Asia, that is the Indian subcontinent actually. It is now, right now, it is some 1888 million, and it will be 115 million by 2030, and it will be 153 million by 2045, with an increase of 74%. So globally, it has become a global emergency actually. Diabetes has become a global emergency, and the major non-communicable diseases. And you take this COVID pandemic right now, the COVID-19, what we are facing, the second phase, the mortality is very high in patients with cardiovascular disease and diabetes. You can very clearly see this. This reference is taken from the descriptive study, that is been the epidemiological and the clinical characteristics of 99 cases of 2019 novel coronavirus pneumonia in Wuhan, where it originated. Actually, the COVID-19 originated from Wuhan, though we are still suspecting China as they have used it as a biological weapon actually. So you can when on the left hand side you can see the chronic medical illness is around 50%, and the cardiovascular and the cerebrovascular disease is as high as 40% actually. So, and on the right hand side you can see the cardiovascular the deaths rated depending upon the underlying health, that is when you name the diseases like the cardiovascular or the diabetes or the respiratory disease or the high blood pressure, and it is the highest the death toll is in the subgroup of the patients who have got the additional risk factor of this cardiovascular disease, and followed by the diabetes, and followed by the respiratory disease, followed by the hypertension. So this endemic of COVID-19, that is endemic is nothing but the synergistic epidemic of COVID-19 and the non-communicable diseases. And if we take this hospital admissions for COVID-19, the clinical outcomes by diabetes status, the violet color is the patients without diabetes, the bar diagrams, and the black box, black bar is the patients suffering from diabetes, patients without diabetes and patients with diabetes. And you take the parameter like severe, the mortality and the inhaled and the ICU and the inotropic and the renal, whatever it may be, you find a lot of incidents of patients seen with this subcategory of patients with diabetes when compared to the patients without diabetes. So all outcomes described in this graph were significantly higher. The p-value is less than 0.05, that is statistically very significant in patients with diabetes. And the relationship between the diabetes and COVID-19 is binuvocal, that is not comparable. So people with diabetes have worse outcomes, we all are aware of this, and SARS-CoV-2, because of its tropism for the beta cell, might cause new onset diabetes or sustained hyperglycemia. This is a very important point. This is the take home message. SARS-CoV can induce acute hyperglycemia, or it can induce the new onset type 2 diabetes. So when you see this diagram, the SARS-CoV-2 virus that damages the beta cell, and it results in cytokine storm, and the beta cell damage again, even at the time of admission you may find hyperglycemia which is because of the beta cell damage, or the worsening of metabolic control in patients with diabetes, prior diabetes. And the subcategory I have already told, the new onset diabetes. And the latest research output says the new onset diabetes with this particular COVID-19 has got the worst outcomes when compared to the patients with COVID infection with prior diabetes, type 2 diabetes. So the new onset diabetes is posing a big threat for the either the morbidity or the mortality, which is very very high in the new onset diabetes, that is seen because of this SARS-CoV-2. And this in turn, this results multiple factors are there, risk factors like obesity, inflammation and coagulation, and the hyperglycemia, which includes the diabetic ketoacidosis and the hyperosmolar hyperglycemic state, and the older age, and the hypertension, the cardiovascular disease, and the renal disease. And finally that leads to poor outcomes, that is the mortality is so high in these patients, and even the post-COVID complications, the post-COVID sequelae are also very high in those segment, that is the patients suffering from diabetes. And again, you see this is an old slide that is 1 year ago. We don't need to bother about this. This was the clinical guidelines with regards to the management of COVID-19 given by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and this is an old guideline. Okay. And let us take this case as 52-year-old type 2 diabetes patient with renal impairment and the symptoms of heart failure and repeated hypoglycemic episodes. The history and examination diagnosed type 2 diabetes 5 years ago, and the complaints of mild progressive dyspnea and exertion and fatigue for the past 4 weeks, and history of chronic illness, the hypertension and dyslipidemia, the comorbidities lasting for the last 7 years, and the past history of recurrent urogenital infections, and experienced repeated episodes of hypoglycemic events recently, and the current medication is metformin plus glimepiride, that is 500 of metformin plus 2 milligram of glimepiride given in the dose of BD, that is in the morning and the evening, and the Voclibose 0.2 milligram at lunch. And the laboratory findings, we find the glycemic profile A1C 7.2, fasting is 135 milligram per deciliter, and postprandial is 180 milligrams per deciliter, and the kidney function and the clinical decision making. The first question will be what should be the target HbA1c for this patient, and second is what should be our approach to maintain glycemic target without further hypoglycemic events. And now we are going to the evidence of efficacy and safety of linagliptin. The glucose lowering efficacy with the DPP4 inhibitors, the comparative efficacy of DPP4 inhibitors, we can see the sitagliptin, the maximum reduction being 0.75% of the A1C, and the linagliptin 0.74% of the reduction, and the veldagliptin 0.67 reduction of A1C percentage, and the saxagliptin 0.61%, and more or less the sitagliptin and the linagliptin they reduce to a tune of 0.74 to 0.75% of glycosylated hemoglobin. And efficacy of linagliptin as monotherapy and in combination with metformin. The left hand side you can see the monotherapy, that is the linagliptin alone, on the right hand side you can see with metformin, and on the left hand side from a baseline of A1C of 9.69, linagliptin was able to reduce the A1C by 2.02%, and from a baseline of HbA1c of 11.8%, linagliptin was able to reduce the HbA1c by 3.46%. So that gives an inference that the higher the A1c, the reductions are the higher. That's it. And the second, on the right hand side, you can see the significant HbA1c reductions for newly diagnosed T2DM patients with high baseline, that is in combination, that is linagliptin plus metformin. The baseline of HbA1c of 8.9 reduced by the HbA1c by 1.60, and respectively 9.73 that was reduced by the 2.81, and 11.8 of A1c, respectively 3.70 was the reduction, and 12.1 the reduction was 5.14. The maximum with the, as the HbA1c is higher, the reductions are more with either the linagliptin or the combination of linagliptin with metformin. And the long-term glycemic efficacy with linagliptin is similar to that of sulfonylureas, that is a phase 3 head-on comparison trial, and you can see this in this graph. The navy blue is the linagliptin plus metformin, whereas the grey is the glimepiride plus metformin. You can clearly see it was a trial conducted for 104 weeks, and you can see the A1C reduction bringing back to the target of 6.5, in between 6.5 and 7. And the initial combination of linagliptin and metformin, and that 2 to 3 fold increased odds of glycosylated hemoglobin, HbA1c goal achievement. And you can see the this bar diagram, the violet being the metformin 500 mg BD, and the pink being the linagliptin 5 milligram with metformin 500 mg BD, and the gray is metformin 1000 milligram BD, and the green is linagliptin 5 milligram, then the metformin is 1000 milligram. You can see the maximum reduction is seen with this particular the linagliptin 5 milligram with metformin 1000 BD. So, and all are they statistically very significant, as the p value is 0.0001. And DP4 inhibitors, linagliptin, especially that has a higher efficacy in Asian patients actually. So, when compared to the Caucasians and the whites, the DPP4 inhibition, especially the linagliptin, is very much high. The DP4 inhibition is very much high. So you see the maximum efficacy in the Asians. The two are the South Asian subcontinent, that is India. When you take this Japanese study for 12 weeks, and the Asians and for 24 weeks, and whites for 24 weeks, you find the baseline A1C was 8.07, and Japanese it got reduced by 0.87, and the baseline in the Asian segment was 8.02, and in the Asians it reduced by 0.91%, whereas the baseline of 7.98 in the whites has reduced only by 0.52% of the HbA1c. So out of this, the inference, the take-home message is the DPP4 inhibition and as well as the SGLT2 inhibition is more in the Asian population when compared to the whites and the Caucasians, that is the Europeans or the Americans or the Canadians, so whatsoever it may be. So, and out of this study, the 58.2% of the Asians were Indian patients, and the adverse events were similar to placebo in Asians. Manur, stuck in there. It's in there, what's it right? Yeah, and this is an important slide where it shows the 77% relative risk reduction with regards to the risk of hypoglycemia with linagliptin versus glimepiride, that is evidenced by our Carolina actually. So you can see the graphs, the purple being the linagliptin, and then the orange being the glimepiride. You can see the curves getting separated from the beginning itself, and the incidence of hypoglycemia with glimepiride is 11.1 per 100 patient years. The subjects taken were 1132 patients, whereas the risk of hypoglycemia is only 2.3 per 100 patient years with linagliptin, and the patients taken were 320 patients. And now you can see the effect of weight with the glimepiride and the linagliptin. Actually, the linagliptin showed a reduced weight by 1.5 kilo when compared to the glimepiride. So now coming to the cardiovascular evidence and heart failure safety. And with Carmelina and Carolina, linagliptin has been statistically evaluated for both cardiovascular and kidney outcomes. You can see this SAVOR-TIMI 53, that is done, the CVOT done with saxagliptin, and the primary endpoint was 3-point MACE and secondary endpoint was 5-point MACE, and the examine is with allogliptin, so same like the primary endpoint was 3-point MACE and secondary endpoint was 4-point MACE, and the TECOS was done with sitagliptin. The primary was the 4-point MACE and the secondary was 3-point MACE. whereas the Carmelina and the Carolina, both primary endpoint was the 3-point maze, and the secondary endpoint was composite renal endpoint and 4-point maze. The Carmelina, the pre-specified adjudicated composite renal endpoints, that is sustained ESRD and sustained reduction in the EGFR by 40% and reductions in the renal death. Slates are not moving. కట్ అయిపోతున్నారు, కిందివి కనపడడం లేదు, వాయిసే కాదు ఈవెన్ స్క్రీన్ కూడా కంప్లీట్గా లేదు.
హలో 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 సార్, అదే మనం వాయిస్ బ్రేక్ అవుతుంటే అదే మన సిస్టమ్ స్ట్రక్ అయింది చూస్తున్నా.
10 అప్డేట్ చేసుకుంటే విండోస్ 10 స్పీడప్ అవుతుంది. చాలా పడుతుంది.
కొన్ని ఫైల్స్లో ఓపెన్ కావు సార్ 10లో. ఇప్పుడు మనం
ఆహా.
ప్రెజెంటేషన్ చేసిన ఫైల్ నాకు ఓపెన్ అవ్వదు సార్, అందుకని 7 తీసుకున్నాను.
ఓహో,
అప్డేట్ చేసేవాళ్ళు సార్, చేసిందే ఆ ఫైల్స్ ఓపెన్ కావట్లేదు,
ఓకే.
అందుకనేసి తీసుకున్నాను.
హైడ్ చేశారు. Am I audible, Madhu? Okay. Sorry for the technical glitch. So now we are moving to this, the broad patient profile studied with Carmelina and Carolina. And as you know, the diabetes is a progressive disease. The initiation and progression of complications, that leads to high renal risk and albuminuria, proteinuria, declining EGFR when it is related to the kidney parameters, and the high cardiovascular risk and left ventricular hypertrophy and the heart failure and the atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease and the heart, and the finally resulting into the end stage renal disease and the congestive heart failure. And we have all the trials, that is the Carolina and the Carmelina are with this particular the linagliptin, and the Tecos is the COBT with the sitagliptin, and the Seva-TIMI 53 is with sasagliptin, and the Examine is with alogliptin. These are all the DPP4 inhibitors available in our country. And the cardiovascular and the renal outcomes with DPP4 inhibitors, linagliptin is safe across all cardiovascular and renal outcomes. You can see the same thing is being repeated again. The Seva-TIMI 53 with saxagliptin, and the Tecos with sitagliptin, and the Carmelina with the linagliptin. You can see the parameters. The hospitalization for heart failure and the cardiovascular death and the 3-point MACE renal outcomes. Everything is very fair with linagliptin, and the vildagliptin has got no cardiovascular outcome trials, but the VIVID study, the VIVID, the VIVID trial gives the evidence of increased left ventricular volumes, which may predispose to the heart failure in future. And teneligliptin, as you are all aware, there is no COVT for this, and there is always a risk of the prolongation of the QTC interval, which leads to the ventricular arrhythmias and sudden cardiac deaths. So, keeping the time in view, I just have to move quickly, and I touch upon the important slides, and this is the ICH E14, that is which is assessed for the QTCs as per the ICH E14, and linagliptin stands first out of all, and the carbolina, no increased risk of hospitalization with heart failure in patients with history of heart failure at baseline. The study which we have taken, the example, the patient which we have taken, he is suffering from heart failure actually, and history of heart failure at baseline also, and the time to first occurrence of adjudication, the confirmed hospitalization for heart failure, and you can compare with the placebo. It is not inducing the any negative effects on the heart failure. And this is across the different groups, the study of linagliptin, the North American subgroup. The North American subgroup, the relative risk reduction was 35%. The Asian subgroup was the highest. The relative risk reduction was 53%. And the patients not using insulin at baseline, the relative risk reduction was 38%. The subgroup analysis was not statistically designed to evaluate the outcomes independently. So, any such evidence must be viewed as hypothesis is generating only, not as confirmatory evidence. And no increased risk of heart failure or the hospitalization for heart failure was consistent across the high risk subgroups. Like Carolina showed that linagliptin did not increase the hospitalization for the heart failure risk regardless of the baseline characteristics such as history of heart failure, renal impairment, atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, the insulin use, the world region, or the patients aged somewhere around some more than 65. So, the European Society of Cardiology and the European Association of Study for Diabetes guidelines 2019, what they say is GP4 inhibitors in patients with the T2DM with heart failure, and it says the level of recommendation is the class of recommendation is 2B, and the level of evidence is B. The DP4 inhibitors sitagliptin and linagliptin have a neutral effect on the risk of heart failure hospitalization and may be considered for DM diabetes mellitus treatment in patients with heart failure. So, sitagliptin significantly increased the risk of hospitalization for the heart failure, and also the alogliptin was associated with non-significant trend towards hospitalization for the heart failure, and vildagliptin had no significant effect on LVF, but already we have discussed it increases the left ventricular volumes, thereby it can induce heart failure. And the robust real world evidence with linagliptin complements the RCTs in clinical decision making, as you can see it on the left hand side, the 2 years insurance database, and on the right hand side the Korean South Korean database which say the linagliptin associated with 23% lower risk of composite cardiovascular events versus second generation sulfonylureas, that is the glimepiride, and the linagliptin associated with 26% of lower risk of hospitalization for heart failure events versus second generation of sulfonylurea in the South Korean database. So evidence of renal safety, and the linagliptin has proven safety and effectiveness across the spectrum of chronic kidney disease. That is the you can see the HbA1c reductions with linagliptin across the CKD spectrum, that is moderate to severe renal impairment and ESRD and hemodialysis and new onset diabetes after transplant. You can clearly see that there is the reduction of A1C in every subset of this particular the mild to moderate to severe renal impairment and the ESRD and the hemodialysis and the new onset of diabetes, the new onset diabetes after the renal transplant also. And Carbolina was specifically designed and statistically powered to evaluate both cardiovascular and kidney outcomes. You can very clearly see that Carbolina, that is the pre-specified adjudicated composite renal endpoints with the sustained end-stage renal disease and sustained reduction of EGFR EGFR of more than 40% and the renal deaths are prevented. And the Carbolina increases the highest proportion of patients with reduced kidney function compared with any other COVTs till to date. You can see others are being like the sitagliptin 22.7% and the alogliptin 29.1% and the sevartimi is 15.7%, whereas the linagliptin group at the highest 62.3%. The patients with reduced the estimated glomerular filtration, that is less than 60 ml per minute per 1.73 meter square of the body surface. And the cardiovascular safety of DPP4 inhibitors in patients with kidney disease has been appropriately studied in Carbolina. The safety of linagliptin in patients with kidney disease has been appropriately studied only in Carbolina. 74% of the trial population were having prevalent kidney disease, and you can see the bar diagram showing the beneficial effect of the linagliptin. And the Carbolina demonstrated a long-term kidney safety with linagliptin. And the learnings from Carbolina trial, the risk reduction for albuminuria with linagliptin, the 14% lower risk of progression to albuminuria you can find on the left hand side the graph, and the right hand side you find 15% greater likelihood of significant regression in the urinary albumin creatinine ratio, which is a very, very significant point. Stuck in there. And coming to the evidence of hepatic safety with linagliptin, so type 2 diabetes and liver dysfunction, you can clearly see in this slide the liver disorders in type 2 diabetes. The 70% patients they do suffer with the fatty liver disease, that is the NAFLD, that is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or the alcoholic fatty liver disease, which may lead to the increase in the liver enzymes, which may lead to the NASH, that is the non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which may lead to the scarring, that is the cirrhosis, and the fatty liver disease leads to poorly controlled diabetes, and severe insulin resistance and high insulin requirements. And linagliptin, no dose adjustment is required in hepatic impairment when compared to the other gliptins, like the comparable gliptin is saxagliptin, that can be used very safely in the patients with chronic liver disease, along with like linagliptin, and the others cannot be used. And the role of DPP-4 inhibitors in chronic liver disease. So the linagliptin, there is no dose adjustment required in the mild to moderate hepatic impairment, and there is no dose adjustment required even in severe hepatic impairment also. Sitagliptin, it is not, the no dose requirement is required in mild to moderate chronic liver disease, whereas it is not studied in the severe chronic liver disease. And vildagliptin is not recommended, and saxagliptin, that's what I told, that can be given even at the mild to moderate to the severe chronic liver disease. And teneligliptin, I don't talk about, I don't want to talk about the teneligliptin, please. And the evidence of convenience actually. So the unique pharmacological properties of linagliptin with clinical relevance, and the linagliptin is the small tablet, very convenient to swallow. It has got the highest potency to inhibit DPP-4 activity, and linagliptin has the lowest plasma fluid concentrations with the DPP-4 inhibitors class, safety in hepatic impairment, and linagliptin has the highest selectivity for DPP-4 compared to QPP bar DPP-2, QPP, the DPP-8 and the DPP-9. And when you take it universally, nearly half of the patients on DPP-4 inhibitors, they received unlicensed doses. For example, different studies have shown that it is significant proportion of the renally impaired patients receive an unlicensed DPP-4 inhibitor dose. Like the UK studies, they say that is 45%, and the USA that is 47%. Linagliptin offers convenience of single dose, making it as a real renal gliptin, which requires no dose titration at any point of the kidney disease, let it be mild to moderate to severe, that is end-stage renal disease, or during dialysis along with insulin, or during the transplant also along with the insulin. It doesn't have you don't need to go for any sort of dose titration. And a simple way to keep your patients on a licensed dose when administered as appropriate is 5 milligram of linagliptin OD, and no requirement for additional drug related renal function monitoring. Whereas when you take all the other gliptins, you have to monitor the kidney function, thereby you have to calculate the EGFR, and according to that you have to down titrate the dose, like sitagliptin or the saxagliptin or the vildagliptin. The dose is to be reduced in the renal impairment cases, whereas linagliptin does not require any sort of dose titration in any point of the renal impairment. And that's what I said, that the DPP-4 inhibitors, the dose adjustment in renal impairment, you can see you don't need to you start with 5 milligram, you stay with 5 milligram, no dose adjustment is required. Whereas sitagliptin, you start with 100 milligram, you have to come down to 50, or you have to come down to 25. Saxagliptin, you start with 5 milligram and you have to come down to 2.5, where there is renal impairment. Vildagliptin 50 mg BD has to become 50 mg OD, and teneligliptin can be given as 20 milligram OD, and it has got limited evidence, and I already told you there is a tendency for this prolongation of the QTc interval, leading to the ventricular arrhythmias, which lead to the sudden cardiac death and the liver enzyme elevations, and it causes hyperkalemia. Linagliptin offers the convenience of single dose, a simple method to maintain patients on licensed dose without dose modification in chronic kidney disease. and evidence across the broad range of type 2 diabetes patients. That is the baseline characteristics of DPP4 inhibitors, the cardiovascular outcome trials. You can see with the cardiovascular risk or the renal risk and high cardiovascular risk, and there are the two studies, the COVTs, that is the Carolina, that is done with this particular linagliptin, comparing this efficacy of linagliptin with glimepiride, moderate sulfonylurea. That's a low cardiovascular and low kidney risk study, which was done for 6.3 years. And whereas Carbolina is a high cardiovascular and high kidney risk patients were included, and the median type 2 diabetes duration was 14.75 years in Carbolina, and other COVTs like Tecos and Examine and Sevatemi, the Tecos can be used because it has got the neutral effect on the cardiovascular outcomes, but as far as the heart failure is concerned, you cannot use either the saxagliptin or the alogliptin or the vildagliptin. You have to be little bit cautious. It doesn't induce heart failure, but the vildagliptin, I have already told you, that increases the left ventricular volumes. And so linagliptin beneficial in the elderly compared to the glimepiride, because the only side effect of glimepiride being it induces more incidence of hypoglycemia, which is not desirable in the elderly patients. So in that particular patients, subset of patients, linagliptin is very beneficial, especially in the elderly. That is 83% of relative risk reduction in hypoglycemia in elderly with the patients over 75 years of linagliptin, and the modest body weight reduction versus glimepiride achieved with linagliptin across the age groups. And these are important considerations when selecting therapy for the elderly especially. And Carbolina, no increased risk of cardiorenal events in the older patients, which is a very desirable and favorable factor towards linagliptin. And Carbolina also no increased risk of cardiovascular and the heart failure and the renal events in Asian type 2 diabetes patients with linagliptin. And let's talk about the COVID-19 pandemic. On March 11th, 2020, the World Health Organization (WHO) declared the novel coronavirus disease 2019, the COVID-19, a global pandemic, which classifies the outbreak as an international and this is the selection of drugs during the COVID pandemic or the suspected COVID positive patients suffering from type 2 diabetes mellitus, and the metformin. The considerations are dehydration and lactic acidosis. If patients are dehydrated, so patients should stop taking the drug and follow sick day rules. And during the illness, renal function should be carefully monitored because of the high risk of chronic kidney disease or acute kidney injury. And DPP4 inhibitors, these drugs are generally well tolerated and can be continued. When it comes to SGLT2 inhibitors, risk of dehydration and diabetic ketoacidosis during illness, stop taking the drugs and follow the sick day rules. Patients should avoid initiating therapy with during the respiratory illness, and renal function should be carefully monitored for acute renal injury. So I don't prefer this particular SGLT2 inhibitors actually as a drug of choice in SARS-CoV-2 patients actually. And GLP-1 analog, dehydration is very likely to lead to a very serious illness, so patients should be closely monitored. Adequate fluid intake and regular meals should be encouraged. And insulin remains the main drug of choice actually. And apart from DPP4 inhibitors, the main drug is only the insulin. And DPP4 inhibitors, they remain as add-on therapy. The insulin therapy should not be stopped. In fact, it should be encouraged. Actually, the insulin therapy should be initiated in all the patients suffering from the COVID-19 Like any other infection, we stop all the oral drugs and we switch over to insulin. And regular self-monitoring of blood glucose every 2 to 4 hours should be encouraged. That is, SMBG is very much required, or the continuous glucose monitoring CGMS. Careful adjustment. Carefully adjust the regular therapy if appropriate to reach the therapeutic goals according to the diabetes type, comorbidities, and health status. And thank you for patient listening. If there are any questions, we'll take up the question and answer session, please. Madhu? Madhu, are you there? Are there any questions? Hello? Yeah, thank you so much. Okay. ఓకే మన దాంట్లో వస్తారా ఇక్కడ చాట్ బాక్స్లో ఓ రేట్ వచ్చేసి రైట్ అది ఆఫ్ చేసి